Welcome to the Season 8 compilation of the Questlore series, where I complete the latest 12 quests of the game, mostly set in Varlamore, but ending with the Grandmaster quest while Guthix sleeps. Children of the Sun. You speak to Noah and Alina near the fountain in the middle of Varrock. They're talking about a delegation arriving from Varlamore. The kingdom has finally opened its border to travel and trade. You mentioned that you're somewhat of an adventurer yourself. Varlamore is south of the mountains of Great Korend. The Varlamorians have a religion where they worship the sun and the moon. Alina knows a lot about Varlamore because she heard many stories being told from a group of travellers who claimed that they were from the College of Bards. They were on their way travelling to Mauritania, and you also can encounter them in sleep during the Sins of the Father quest. The delegation arrives and you clock a suspicious looking guard passing by with a large sack. You decide to follow him without entering his line of sight, so you keep behind him and don't let him get too far away. Pursuing him through the alleyways of Varrock, you see him meet a group of bandits who are going to use the stolen Varrock guard uniforms in an attempt to assassinate the delegates of Varlamore. But, as this bandit was rushed, he couldn't grab the complete armor sets for all the guards. You inform the sergeant of the guards about this plot, mentioning the one that was carrying a large bag. The sergeant says he didn't recognize him because it's hard to keep up. For some reason they're going through guards so quickly these days. He asks for you to mark the 4 bandits. These are the ones who look or act differently to the rest. 1 is without a helmet, 2 don't have weapons and are just lounging about, and the other one has a mace instead of a sword. The bandits are quickly arrested and are going to be interrogated. You go with Sergeant Tobin to the cell on the palace roof for the interrogations, and Prince Itzler appears. He was getting bored of all the politicking downstairs and suggests using an unconventional interrogation method. With the threat of cooking the bandit alive and feeding him to chickens, the bandit says he would not like to go through the Varlamorian interrogation method and decides to speak. The bandit explains that he doesn't know the name of who employed him, he was just paid to attack the delegation. The employer did not look like they were local, and the High Priest of Varlamore was the target. The fear of being cooked is all it takes to get the information. Itzler explains that they're much more civilized than that on Varlamore and they don't actually do this. They prefer to cut out the heart while it's still beating instead. You can't tell if it's a joke or not. You are now given permission by Prince Itzler to visit Varlamore whenever you want, and you can continue your investigation there. You speak to Regular Cento outside the eastern gates of Varrock. Completing this quest is a requirement for At First Light, the Ribbiting Tale of a Lilypad Labour Dispute, Death on the Isle, Meet and Greet, Ethically Acquired Antiques, and Twilight's Promise. To start this quest you must have completed Children of the Sun. You talk to Regular Cento, the Quetzal Keeper, who will let you ride Primio to get to Varlamore. Outside the palace, you meet the Tullus twins, Ennius and Furia, to begin the quest. They're the ones who organised the expedition to Varrock. They tell you that the prince is ready to meet you in the Holy Temple south of the Bazaar. Here you meet Metzli, who is the high priest you saved in the previous quest. She is one of 2 Teocans, which means leaders of the Sun religion. One is the leader of the darkness and night, and the other is the leader of light and day. You say that you're supposed to be meeting the prince here, and Metzli says that he is downstairs because it's one of the only places where he can get a little bit of peace. The prince is speaking to the other Teocan, Servius, and the reason you are meeting down here is because someone wants him dead. All they can deduce so far is that the assassination was plotted by a Varlamorian, but they have managed to whittle down the number of suspects and believe it's either the Tullus twins or one of the knights that were with them. Servius doesn't want to hide down here in the crypt because he wants to fulfill his duties back at his temple. Now it's your job to investigate the knights on your own. You go into the palace and speak to the Tullus twins again. The delegation that went to Misfalin consisted of 6 knights. 2 are in the bazaar, 1 is at the port, 2 are in the outer fortress, most likely at the pub, and the other one is at the Colosseum. You take a crest with you so that they will not ignore you and answer to your request to come to the palace. The 2 knights at the bazaar don't want to leave until they found the thief. They planted a shiny amulet on one of the stalls and it was stolen soon after. You pickpocket a citizen in a blue toga to get the amulet back. Now that their work is done, they'll return to the palace. The knight at the harbour doesn't want to leave until she discovers which ship is involved in weapon smuggling. She says that a crate with weapons should be on the docks next to 2 barrels of fish and opposite a bench. The label on the crate reads Fortis Spark. Now that her work is done, she will return to the palace. Next you go inside the Colosseum. The knight doesn't want to leave until he's completed some training. You fight him with 2 different attack styles. Now that he's satisfied, he will return to the palace. You get to the pub and find the last two knights. Seeing that Azali is drunk, you slowly get her to the fountain so that she can refresh herself in the cold water, sobering her up enough, and with that, the last two knights return to the palace. Before their expedition to Varlamore, the knights were granted 6 beds in headquarters, and you're asked to see if you can find anything of note. Up the stairs, you search the southern chest in the southern room and find an incriminating letter saying that finally the opportunity has arrived for the Teokan to be murdered whilst in Misthalin. After his demise, the Twilight promise can begin and they will see the final dawn. You show the Tuller siblings the letter and they say that Vilam is the traitor, so they execute him right on the spot. You think this was a bit sudden and not enough time was given to properly interview Vilam. Now you are to report back to the prince who is at the Teomat, which is a monastery found on the summit of Rallo's Rise. As it would be quite a long walk to get there, it's suggested that you talk to regular Sento to see if you can fast travel there, and he grants you the ability to use your own Quetzal called Renu free of charge. It is capable of flying anywhere in Varlamore if there is a suitable place to land, and you can build some of these landing spots yourself if you would like. Sento gives you some Quetzal feed for Renu, and you fly to the Teomat. Here you find the prince and Servius and mention that murdering the traitor before even having a chance to question them is a little bit suspicious, but the prince explains that in Varlamore, justice is delivered swiftly and harshly. You say that the letter could have been planted and possibly have allowed the traitor to get away with it. They explain that there are some tensions for who should be the ruler of the Varlamorian kingdom, including the Tullus family, who used to be the rulers for the longest time of Varlamore's history, only having switched houses in the last 100 years. There is plenty of reason for there to be a revenge plot to take over the throne. You also bring up the fact that Twilight's promise and the final dawn were mentioned in the letter. The Twilight emissaries are a religious cult with an unhealthy obsession with the end of the world, which they call the final dawn, and believe that they should be bringing it about. You can learn more about it by speaking with Metzli in the library. She explains the concept of Shimua, an interpretation of a belief passed down from the old ones. When the god of light and the god of dark merge into one, the world will burn to ashes. Then, something can rise from those embers and the cycle of the world continues once more. Some in the cult believe it's their duty to make the world end, and they're not stopping at anything to get that task done. Suddenly the palace is raided by a bunch of cultists. After you defeat them, you find that Metzli has been stabbed near the heart. The prince already sent word to the queen. You now have to make a plan on how to deal with the cultist problem. You are rewarded with the ability to use Quetzals. You can now use the Civitas Illa Fortis teleport and gain 3000 thieving XP. Completing this quest is a requirement for Perilous Moons and the Heart of Darkness. To start this quest you must have completed Children of the Sun and Twilight's Promise. Continuing from the last events, you're going to go undercover. As the Twilight emissaries have now made 2 attempts to murder the prince's father, they have to be dealt with swiftly and brutally. First we need proof that they were responsible for this, so they want you to infiltrate the cult. The queen arrives and the king explains that even their knights have been infiltrated, with one of them possibly having been incriminated. Itzler tells you to head to the pub in the Quetzcali Gorge and rent the room. He will send you one of the only people that he can trust. You get there quickly by using the Quetzal transport system and enter the pub, renting the room from the bartender for 30 coins. To pass the time, you rest in the bed, quite possibly for the first time in your 1000-hour adventure so far in RuneScape. Then the prince appears instead of one of his trustees. This is because there are very few people he can trust right now, and the fate of the kingdom is in your hands. The fewer people that know about this mission, the better. The Twilight emissaries won't take kindly to you just walking in, but the local shopkeeper might be able to help out. By providing food for the poor, potions for the sick, and that sort of thing, they may believe that you are a reasonable person, so the shopkeeper will send word to his friend that you're going to help. The prince departs in disguise to go to the Twilight Temple. Then you pass through the large gates and make your way there too. Itzler has decided that his secret name will be Itzlan. Before the emissaries can accept you as a new member, they need to evaluate you in some tests. But first, you gain some more intel by speaking with the other potential recruits. You learn that they gained a new leader recently, referred to as the Augur, and they're working on trying to bring Shimua, the end of the world according to their religion, although the cult believes that this will bring a new beginning. Now it's time to enter the tower and prove your worth. In the tests, you will demonstrate your intellect, strength, loyalty, and ability to sacrifice. To pass the first floor, you need to speak the correct passphrase. You pickpocket one of the emissary ascended to get a key which opens a gate. Here you find a chest with a book and a scrap of paper. The highlighted words are Restless, Awaited, Nature, and Invoke. The first letter of the highlighted words is the passcode for the next chest, where you get a poem, which Prince Itzler translates, giving 4 coordinates. You enter these on the final chest, giving you a final scrap of paper. Combining all these scraps, you get the completed note with the passcode and climb to the next level of the Tower of Ascension. Now you have a combat trial. You can use bandages from the medical boxes to heal Prince Itzler. After surviving all the waves, you're ready to start the next trial. You have to determine which of the acolytes is the traitor. You ask them questions to suss them out and find out the one that has beliefs that don't line up with the emissaries. With that, you're ready to move on to the final trial. You must now fight Prince Itzler. He announces when he's going to do his special attacks. One deactivates your prayer, the other sends out a wave, which you can avoid by running to the other side of him. You fight until the prince is within an inch of his life, and now you've completed your trials. You will make a fine emissary, they say. The Auga herself will oversee your initiation. You collect new robes from the chest and head to the temple. Here you meet Forebearer Fides, who calls upon the Auga to explain the holy mission. It is revealed that the Auga is Metzli, one of the Teocans, and she claims that the twins Ennius and Furia Tullus are the mortal forms of their gods Ralos and Ranul, who were reborn during an eclipse, and that they're supposed to unite the people to bring about the end of the world so that a new one can rise from the ashes. Fides tasks you with opening up the passage of the ruins of Tepoyawik, a fortress of the Old Ones that's under the temple. Metzli believes the Old Ones would have left behind secrets there to bring about the final dawn. So you enter the ruins, take a pickaxe from the barrel and assist in clearing the passage. In this dungeon there are frost naguas which you avoid. You get past the traps, slide along ice walls and pull 4 different levers throughout the dungeon, and then also pull on a chain which deactivates the traps and can also be used as a shortcut to skip the dungeon in the future. The levers activated 4 braziers which opened the gate. In the next room you start searching some urns that have rune symbols marked on them, and you find some icons which can be placed on the broken statues. You ask the prince to translate the markings on the walls, and they're the numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4, so you touch the statues in the indicated order to unlock the frozen door. The Amoxliatl appears. Suddenly, the Tullus twins appear and teleport the prince out, and also themselves, leaving you behind as a sacrificial lamb to the Amoxliatl, who does not think you are worthy. Anyway, you defeat it and it banishes you from the temple. You update Servius, who seems to have recovered from the knife wound. You explain that Itzler has been captured by the Tullus twins and that they're claiming to be reincarnations of Ralos and Ranul. The cult is trying to reach Mokhyotl, also known as the Talati Archive. You explain that you encountered a powerful Nagua in the Old One's ruins. The priest will update his wife the Queen and spare you from having to face her yourself, because she will be very angry with the fact that the prince has been kidnapped. They will call on you when you are needed for the next continuation of this questline. You now have access to Tepoyawik. You get 8000 XP in mining, thieving, slayer and agility. At first light. To start this quest you must have completed Eagle's Peak and Children of the Sun. You speak to Guildmaster Apatura in Varlamore and ask if she needs any help. She says that her scribe Verity needs some assistance, so you climb down the stairs in a hollow tree and speak to her behind a bar. She writes reports for all the different hunter masters, who you can help by hunting the creatures and unique specimens that they task you with, but she hasn't been able to keep track of one of the hunters, called Fox. She asks you to speak with Guild Hunter Wolf to try and trace his last movements. Wolf had asked Fox to repair Kiko the cat's bed. To inspect the bed you can distract Kiko with a fake mouse toy, and you see that it's made of a fluffy fur that you don't recognize. It seems that someone has intentionally cut off a small bit of it, so you're asked to speak with a contact who lives in the Outer Fortis who knows all about fur. Although, as Fox last said he was going to do a bit of hunting for pyrofoxes near the Locust Oasis, that's where you're going to check first. Near a massive hole in the ground you find Fox. Something attacked him in the dark and now he can't move. He believes that a few plants around can make a poultice, which is a covering used to heal an injury. He says you can make one from 2 different herbs and a tail of an ember-tailed jerboa. One of the plants is right here, the other is near the oasis with the capybaras, and the jerboas can be trapped with boxes. Here you see a leafy bush which you get a smooth leaf from. Then near the oasis with the capybaras, you find a rough-looking bush from which you pick a sticky leaf. Here you set up a box trap to catch some ember-tailed jerboas and get 2 jerboa tails. You use one with 2 leaves to craft a makeshift poultice. Guild Hunter Fox is given this makeshift plaster and then explains that it was at the moment when he was about to hunt a creature with the most excellent fur for Kiko's bed that he got attacked, and he had his equipment stolen. The patch that was missing in Kiko's bed was a sample that he was going to hand to the fur lady in the outer fortress, who will know exactly what you need. While she goes to look for the fur hidden in a crate somewhere, she asks you to repair the mechanism that's on the floor here. Then you return to Fox, and seeing that he's okay, he writes a report for you to give back at the guild. You use the fur with the jerboa tail to carefully fix up Kiko's bed, making it much comfier. You give the report to Verity and explain that Fox is on the mend and should be better soon. Then you check with the guildmaster and you are rewarded with 4,500 Hunter XP, 800 Construction XP and 500 Herblore XP. You also now have access to Master Tier Hunter's Rumours, Perilous Moons. To start this quest you must have completed Children of the Sun and Twilight's Promise. You go to the entrance of Cam Torum where you see some guards and some builders. You speak to Atala, who doesn't want any humans to go into the city despite there being a deal for construction. Suddenly, a guard says that a creature managed to escape through the mountain's outflow spring. You offer to help, but Atala doesn't want any help from a human. Anyway, you walk around, climb up the rock slide and fight the Nagua that escaped. You let Atala know that the ridge is secured, and so she hesitating lets you and the builders inside. The builders recommend that you speak to Jess in the north of the city. She's an archaeologist who's investigating the ruins that the dwarves have found and where the monster has come from. The dwarves you pass are verbally aggressive towards you. They really don't like humans. You find Jess near the entrance of the ruins. She thanks you for helping with the supplies getting to her. You ask if you can help with her exploration of the ruins, and seeing that you can defend yourself, she accepts and says that you can help her set up some base camps. Here in the entrance of the ruins, you see a massive monolith in the middle of the room, which has a quiet humming coming from it. Atala is examining a strange painting on the wall, and the priest Zuma says that he believes this place is a shrine built by the emissaries of Ranul. Jess has found something written in the language of the Old Ones. She's currently deciphering it, so while she's busy translating, she would like you to set up the camps in each of the 3 caverns, which would make further exploration easier. You take the building supplies and construction materials and go through the southwestern entrance, running past the sulfur naguas of this ancient prison to build the first camp spot. At these camps you're able to restore your run energy. Then you pass through the northeastern gate and head deep into the steam-bound cavern to build another campsite. And lastly, in the northwestern earthbound cavern, you build a third and final one. Back in the main antechamber, Jess has finished deciphering the inscriptions and thinks it's unwise to free the emissaries of ancient times that could bring danger, even though we could still learn more about them. She says that they were sealed by the path of earth and streams of water. This magic originates somewhere within these ruins, which she discovered has a name. These ruins are called Napotsley, and she thinks that these 2 talismans that she found, of earth and water, are connected to it. Atala suggests that you speak with Nata in the magic shop, and to mention that she sent you. Nata casts a spell on the talismans and tells you to take them to the blacksmith. They'll now react to Naguanal magic. It's an ancient form of magic that has been forgotten by most people, but as the dwarves of Cam Torum are experts in both blacksmith and magic, he can take the talisman and infuse them. Then you return to Atala with the enchanted talismans. The earth talisman pulls you west or east, and the water talisman pulls you north or south. Using these, you coordinate yourself to find a Nagua named Ayat Lali, who is speaking a language that you don't understand, but thankfully she then switches to English. She's a Nagua of both the earth and the streams, and she explains that Napotsley is a prison for the Moons of Peril, a trio of terrible and powerful Nagua, and also their long-dead summoner, who wanted to wreak havoc when facing his inevitable death, deciding to lash out and inflict death on others too. This prison was created to contain them, and Ayat Lali keeps them in check. Suddenly, the icosahedron in the antechamber starts shaking. It has been disturbed because the priest accidentally touched it. As this object is the key to the magics that keep the Moons of Peril contained, it has to be reinfused with a ritual. You need to obtain the scales of a bream, the tail of a moss lizard, and a paste made from moonlight grubs. Near the northeastern room's camp spot, you grab some moonlight grubs from the saplings near the water and crush them with a pestle and mortar. You then use the fishing spot to catch a raw bream and use a knife on it to get the scales. Walking north from here and passing a small entrance, you find a hunting area where you set up the traps between 2 rocks. You rustle a bush and the lizards come out, stepping into the trap, so you catch a raw moss lizard and then cut its tail. Then you return to the antechamber and give Ayat-Lali the items. The ritual is in motion, but the wounds of the seal will not close if the moons are still raging against it, so you've got to go to their chambers and engage them in combat whilst Ayat-Lali fixes the seal. She will put glyphs on the floor to protect and guide you in the fights. Standing within the highlighted circles that are moving in a clockwise direction, you are able to damage the enemies. When the highlighted circles reach the full and empty moons, the bosses use a special attack. The blood moon is weak to slash. When it rains blood from above, you avoid the pools of blood on the floor. And when the blood jaguars appear, you stand on the highlighted circle and attack the jaguars to prevent the boss from healing. The blue moon is weak to crush. When your weapon is frozen in a block of ice, you click on the highlighted ice to get your weapon back. And the other special attack is to light 2 braziers whilst avoiding the damage of the whirlwinds. A cutscene plays in the Eclipse Moon room, where Zuma believes that he is seeing an emissary of the god, but without realizing the danger that he's in, he's attacked. The Eclipse Moon is weak to stab. One of the specials is that a shield will appear, and you've got to keep it between you and the boss to prevent damage. The other special attack teleports you to the center of the room and freezes you in place, so you must face the clones that are attacking you from all directions to avoid their damage. Now that the threat is contained, you return to the antechamber. Jess will continue to explore this place, and Atala is grateful that you've ensured Camp Torum's safety, so you will be welcomed back into the city if you wish to visit. Zuma realizes his foolishness and mentions something about runes infused with magic of the sun and the moon, saying that there may be a connection to Ranul and Ralos in this place after all. By the way, Ranul is lunar spelled backwards, and Ralos is solar spelled backwards. Lastly, you speak to Ayat-Lali, who has managed to repair the seal, but now that the moons have had a glimpse of freedom, they're raging harder than ever against their bindings, and it's taxing on her. If you keep distracting the moons, Ayat-Lali may repay you with some trinkets from ancient times. You get 40,000 Slayer XP and 5,000 runecrafting, hunter and fishing XP. Plus you now have access to the Perilous Moons bosses, and you can also claim an extra reward in the chamber to the southeast by looting the lunar chest. The Ribbiting Tale of a Lilypad Labour Dispute. To start this quest you must have completed Children of the Sun. Marcellus is paranoid about the frogs. He believes that they're out to enslave everyone. You check on the frogs and are surprised that they can speak clear English. The frog points out that there are giant lizards with wings who can fly around and expel highly combustible fluids from their mouths, so why would a talking frog be any more strange? Fair point. He then introduces himself by name and all the other frogs. You explain that Marcellus thinks the frogs are evil, but Gary says they're just on strike. You ask why, but they're not even sure. This is just the way it's been for so many generations that they've forgotten the original reason why, but they seem certain that Marcellus keeps mistreating them. So if Marcellus ever wants to see them working, he needs to show them some respect, and Gary calls him a greedy capitalist. You say that Marcellus thinks that the frogs were considering taking over the world, and he became so paranoid that he even considered killing the frogs. As a response to this, they actually consider taking over the world just to protect themselves. The revolution starts today, but you suggest peace instead, and we'll report back to the frogs what Marcellus thinks of this suggestion. Marcellus says peace is not an option. You ask why, and he says he can't remember, but the frogs must have done something. As he can't remember the original reason why, he's now convinced himself that the frogs must have stolen his brain. So he wants you to demand for the frogs to give his brain back by negotiating with their leader. They don't currently have a leader, although they did once consider starting a union, but they messed up all the paperwork and didn't follow through with it. Now they do feel like they have been stagnating, so this is just the thing that they need, and now they're going to hold an election. They vote based on a candidate's hopping abilities, but they are worried about Cuthbert running for election, because in the past, whilst he was a leader that promoted frogs living peacefully alongside humans, the humans have since then destroyed his favourite plant, and some wounds never heal. He would run a campaign of war, so the election has to be rigged in a way that prevents him from winning. The hop-off is a jump from the shore to a lily pad. If Cuthbert's lily pad is sabotaged, he'll lose, but you can't let Jane or Dave see that you're tampering with the lily pad. As independent third parties have already given them a quick check, you now need to distract them. Fortunately, Jane and David are a bit hungry and would love some oranges, especially because they're bored of eating flies. They want something more exotic, and mention that the best oranges are the ones higher on the tree. You chop the tree down, and whilst they're distracted with the oranges, you make a barely noticeable hole in the lily pad. You then return to Gary and Sue to start the election. Cuthbert unfortunately never learned how to swim, so now he's dead. Since there was only one other candidate, Sue is now in power. Now that they can negotiate peace, they ask what is needed, and you explain that Marcellus wants his brain back. But they don't have it, and they don't even have anything else to offer. You decide to take matters into your own hands and presume that Marcellus doesn't like all the flies around here, so you ask the frogs if they can make a deal with the flies. But they will only deal with the flies if Marcellus gives them fair pay for their work, otherwise they will continue their strike. The payment they want is fresh orange juice. Why do frogs like oranges so much? Marcellus is confused because he doesn't know what the flies did wrong. As you're so tired of this whole situation, you just say that the flies are out to get him and they're planning to kill him tonight. Now Marcellus just wants some proof that this is the case first. You explain to the frogs that Marcellus is open to proposals, but he wants proof that the flies are against him. They suggest stealing a prized possession of his and planting it on the flies. So now, on top of frog slaughter, you're also going to commit theft. Inside Marcellus's home, you can search his bed and find a love letter to Nalia, who hasn't replied to the last 28 letters he sent. Nalia is the code to open a chest and find a plushie inside. The frogs suggest that you plant the plushie in a pile of capybara dung that the flies keep gathering around, which you do. And suddenly Cuthbert, the Lord of Dread, rises from the dead and fights you. Marcellus checks the heap of dung and says that we have a deal with the frogs, and there is peace after all. You say that you wish you could scrub all the memories of this event from your mind. Gary asks if you've tried using soap and water. Oddly enough, you haven't tried that yet. You are rewarded with a new hardwood farming patch and 2000 woodcutting XP, Death on the Isle. To start this quest, you must have completed Children of the Sun. Patsy the actor invites you to a fancy party with some of Alderin's wealthiest citizens at Villa Lesens. The owner of the villa is a patron of the arts, and tonight he's showing his new play. Travelling with Patsy is Adala, who looks after his bag. What Patsy needs you to do is be a butler, but he does not have a butler costume in his bag, so Adala suggests that you get one by stealing it from the house nearby. When no guards are looking, you sneak through the window and take the outfit from the wardrobe, although you are suspicious of how Adala knew that there was a butler outfit available in the first place. Anyway, you now have to help get Patsy's bag inside. You'll have to use the staff entrance, whereas Patsy is going to use the main entrance. There's a strict policy of always wearing your butler outfit and mask. This keeps the butlers anonymous, and you're also prohibited to take any items in or out of the villa. You are to introduce yourself to the host and other guests, and share their names with Patsy so that he fits in a little better. You meet Constantinius, who's the host, and is on the lookout for talent, including actors. Pavo is drunk, Kozyak is an older gentleman, and Shokotla runs a shipping company. Patsy seems excited at the idea of possibly being sponsored and wants to celebrate with some wine. So he asks you to go into the cellar and find some Principum Red, because this specific wine hasn't been produced in a long time. In the cellar, you find the antique wine, but hear a sudden noise, causing you to spill some of it. In the next room, a man has just been knocked out, and whilst you're checking in on him, the two house guards arrest you. They suspect you of the murder of Livius the actor, and think that the red stains on your clothes are of blood, but you explain that it's just some of the wine that you were fetching for Patsy. You heard the noise and thought that someone was hurt, and you were trying to help. As the guards don't want to lose their careers over this, you offer to help find the murderer, and promise not to flee the scene whilst you investigate with them. There's no stab wound on the body, so you consider poison. Constantinius is unsure about who's the best choice to replace Livius, and hopes that his understudy can perform the leading role in his absence. Livius always made a profit for Constantinius, but you consider that a motivation to get rid of him could potentially be because his sponsorship was becoming too expensive. Kozyak claims not to have interacted with Livius. Pavo remembers him as a drinking partner, and Shokotla claims to have never done business with him, even though with a shipping company that would have been a great opportunity to trade costumes from around the world. You investigate the broken pottery and wonder if there was a fight. Then you search a small box with wine labels and also investigate a broken stool, which you presume would have been broken recently. The jug of wine that was near the stairs earlier has been tucked in the corner, so you think that someone is trying to hide it. Lastly, you find a wine storage vessel that's only half full, so you presume that someone was drinking a lot from it. Patsy seemed to be really motivated to try the wine, but Patsy and Adala don't seem too suspicious at this point in time. You speak to the guards about the progress, but without having any clear evidence yet, you suggest that you could try to pickpocket the guests and see if you can find any incriminating information. Adala had some wine labels on her. Kozyak had a letter that was for Livius the actor that just died, but it describes an outstanding debt. And then Shokotla has a shipping contract that was between herself and Livius, contradicting her earlier statement. Pavo had an empty drinking flask. Now he suggests putting pressure on them by throwing some accusations to see if anyone will break, so everyone is gathered upstairs. As drinking partners, it would be quite easy to poison Livius's drink. You also present the outstanding quantity of money that Livius owed Koziak, but he says he only wanted to put some pressure on him, not to kill him. You show the shipping contract, but altogether, it's not too suspicious. Adala doesn't admit to knowing anything about the wine cellar, but you show the wine labels that were on her, so you accuse her. Her plan was to steal the wine and sell it because of how expensive it is, and so Adala was actually using Patsy to get in. But she doesn't admit to murdering Livius, so she starts fighting you. Afterwards, she is escorted by the guards to a cell. Constantinius wants the play to continue with the understudy and thinks that you'll still be able to find the murderer in the meantime. He says that you'll have to use the back entrance to not draw too much attention to yourself, so you go the long way around the cliffs and navigate some loose rocks. The only place you hadn't investigated yet was the stage area, and the last place Livius was seen was the backstage entrance. All the actors are on stage for the play, so while they're there, you're going to investigate. The costumer says that Nyatli is Livius's understudy. Claudius is close to retirement and prefers to take on small but impactful roles, and Quintilia is new and takes on the non-speaking parts. Livius was having his pre-performance drink whilst the rest of the cast was here, including the costumer herself. That's when the murder happened. She doesn't think that anyone went upstairs, though maybe a secret passage could exist. You continue investigating and find a crate next to the stairs that has some poison in it. Then you search the bookcase and find that it's actually a secret passage into the wine cellar. Lastly, you search the costume rack and one of the costumes has a wine stain on it with a label reading Nyatli. You ask about the poison, the costumes and the hidden passage. The poison's for a rat problem, the wine stain costume is not part of the costume set and is suspicious, and the villa used to be used for smuggling wine back in the day, so it's no surprise that there's a hidden passage. You update the guards and accuse Nyatli, the understudy. You get to this conclusion because of the wine-stained clothes. As there was no wine backstage, it must have come from the cellar. The motive would be that the murder of Livius would allow her to take on the leading role and no longer be in his shadow. The guards want to wait for the play to be over before making the arrest, but to speed things up, you decide to go on stage to confront her. She starts running around, so you try your chops at acting by chasing Nyatli around the stage and attacking her. When she's within an inch of her life, she admits that she was stuck in the shadow of Livius for too long. She didn't poison him though. He had too much to drink before the show and he fell down harder than she expected, so she ran away. It turns out that his death was an accident all along, and that no one was guilty of murdering him. You get 2 quest points, 10,000 thieving, 7,500 agility, and 5,000 crafting XP. After you complete the quest, you can speak to the head butler and you'll get a butler's tray or any of the masks. When you speak to the costumer, you get the costume needle, which allows you to craft most items without needing any thread. If you pickpocket Constantinius, you'll find a chest key. In the southern room of the cellar, you can open the fancy chest, and it has a note inside it mentioning something about being cleaned. You search the fountain and find a blue icon. If you go to the most northeastern statue on the island of Alderin, you can use the icon on it to activate it, and this unlocks a teleport location on the Pendant of Eights. Meet and greet. To start this quest, you must have completed Children of the Sun. You speak to Emilio in the Outer Fortis. He has a new business venture idea after visiting the east and trying a kebab. He wants to bring it to Varlamore so that the Varlamorians can experience the incredible flavor combination of meat and vegetables wrapped in bread. He wants to blend the eastern and western ingredients, but he's still missing the spices that the merchant in the bazaar was sorting for him and the buffalo meat from the Ortus farm. So you speak to the spice merchant, asking about the missing delivery. It turns out that the spices had arrived, but he wasn't able to get the box open because there was a lock installed on it by Ali Morrisane, so as to prevent theft. You input the code 2546 based on the brightness of the keypad, and this unlocks the box, which will be sent to Emilio right away. Then, just west of the city, above the buffalo patches, you meet Alba, who's been dealing with a wolf problem that's been causing the delay. The wolves have a den directly west, and whilst most of them don't cause a problem, they've been struggling with a big one recently. You see a bunch of dire wolves in front of a cave, and inside there's a massive one, who howls for the smaller ones to help in the fight. You defeat it, and Alba will be able to finish Emilio's order, so you return to him. Now you need to find out what the right balance of ingredients is. Emilio found some connoisseurs to taste the kebabs. They're the locals in the pub who were promised a drink if they were to help. Emilio explains that they're the perfect clientele. Imagine being out till late at your local establishment, and before heading home, You find yourself in the need for a perfect late night meal. This is where Emilio's kebabs come in. So you've got to find out the perfect ratio of meat, salad, spice and sauce. The clients say that they need 2 parts meat for each part salad, 2 parts salad for each part spice, and the quantity of sauce equals to the spice and salad combined. You suggest to Emilio 4 portions of meat, 2 portions of salad, 1 portion of spice, and 3 portions of sauce to make the perfect balance. Then you test the kebab on the connoisseurs outside and they think it's perfect. The last thing to do is let the rest of Varlamore know about the kebabs through the power of marketing. Emilio suggests that you let Lelia at the Colosseum taste one of the kebabs. She's impressed and says that an advertising spot has just become open before the next contest in the Colosseum. You get a few minutes to promote the kebab. If you want, you could even have the Minotaur interacting with your product placement. She suggests that you take a bite from the kebab and then kick the Minotaur as he looks defeated. This should somehow let the people know how good the kebabs are. So you eat the kebab made with the buffalo meat in front of the Minotaur, who thinks that you're eating one of his kind, so he gets angry and becomes aggressive towards you. You use Protect from Melee the whole fight except when he says moo, at which point you protect from Mage. As the Minotaur's health falls, his attacks become faster. After you defeat it, you complain to Layla that you weren't expecting the Minotaur to attack you, but she doesn't see this as a problem, and in fact, it was actually great advertising. You return to Emilio and say how well the advert worked, and he tells you that it's true, he's already started getting customers. You gain 8,000 cooking XP and now have access to his kebab shop. Ethically acquired antiques. To start this quest you must have completed Shield of Arrav and Children of the Sun. Inside the Civitas Illifortis Museum you inspect the empty display. An article was recently stolen and they're willing to pay a high price for any information that leads to its return, so you speak to the curator to learn a bit more. The item was Zerna's diadem, which is a sort of crown. The local guards started an investigation but haven't made much progress. The curator says that you're free to help look for any sorts of clues. Near the display you find some tools on the floor. Further inspecting the display case, the glass looks like it was tampered with. You then talk to some of the academics and citizens around the room to see if they know anything. The tourist says that he saw a shifty character leaving this museum and then heading towards the Quetzals, so you talk to Regulus Cento. He mentions that someone passed by with a case asking to go on the birds, but Regulus said no, so the shifty character then went eastwards towards the Fortis Kothon, which is the city's port. You ask the trader crew members if they've seen anyone strange carrying a case. They'll tell you what they know if you do them just one small favour. The old sails of the ship need to be mended. They want you to find a crafting store where they'll be able to fix this. You speak to Artima in the crafting store, but to fix the sail, she also asks you for one small favour. You say sure, and she says that it's just to tell the charter crew that she says thanks for the latest shipment they brought in. You give them the fixed sail and mention that Artima says thanks. The guy with the case was asking if he could go on the boat, so now you know he was heading towards Port Sarim. Asking the Port Sarim trade crew if they've seen anyone strange, they say that they saw a grey-haired man with a case who came from Civitas Illifortis. They remember that he wandered north trying to get hold of some runes, so you go to Betty's rune shop. The thief couldn't find the runes he was looking for, but it suggested that he was looking for runes to teleport to Varrock. You talk to Curator Haig Halen in the Varrock Museum and ask him about Zerna's diadem. At first he responds shocked, and he tries to act like he doesn't know much about it, so you pickpocket him and find a storeroom key. In the storage room, you search the crate to find Zerna's diadem, and you accuse Curator Hagen of stealing it. After a long back and forth, you say that he can't justify theft by saying it's for preservation. He explains that when he was visiting Varlamore, there was a tournament going on at the Colosseum, meaning that the museum was quiet. The curator claims that he heard a loud noise behind him and saw a thief was stealing the diadem. He defeated him and decided to protect the diadem in the Varrock Museum. He'll have it sent back right away. You get back to the Grand Museum on Varlamore and talk to the curator, who rewards you with 6,000 thieving XP and 5,000 coins. Defender of Varrock. To start this quest you must have completed Demon Slayer, Romeo and Juliet, What Lies Below, Garden of Tranquility, Family Crest, Below Ice Mountain, Temple of Ikov, and Shield of Arrav. At the Jolly Boar Inn, next to the lumberyard, you meet Elias White, who's an explorer. He was in the desert when he got a tip-off about something near this area. One of the patrons here was ranting and raving about zombies. Whilst most people thought these were just drunk ramblings, Elias didn't. He tells you the tale of Arrav, who once defended Varrock against a zombie invasion led by a Majorat named Zamoragul. Arrav sacrificed himself to save his city, but unfortunately Zamoragul survived. These zombie sightings, and the fact that they also appear to be forming into ranks, is why Elias suspects his return. You ask Elias what led him to this conclusion. He explains that he's been researching the Majorat, hence why he was exploring in the desert, and now he goes more in depth on the tale. In the 4th age, a group of travelers came upon an abandoned child. They set up camp where they found him, and it soon grew into the town of Varrock, which is today known as the city of Varrock. The child became a hero. He defended the settlement from a goblin attack and took the name Arrav, which is a curse word in the goblin tongue. He heroically continued defending this city until he was granted a divination of the future, where he saw the Majorat Zamoragul claiming Varrock as his own. So Arrav set out to find a powerful weapon to best him. This took him to the Imkamdo dwarves, who made him a powerful shield, the Shield of Arrav. He faced off Zamoragul and the zombie horde, and the invasion was repelled, but it came at the cost of his life. Zamoragul hasn't been seen since, and his last act before retreating was to claim Arrav's body and cursing him into becoming an undead slave. It's been hundreds of years since then, and most people have completely forgotten about Zamoragul. Inquiring about how Elias came to know so much, he says he used to be an adventurer like you. You ask him if he had any life-changing injuries, and he says, thankfully not. As the sightings were right outside the inn, you're going to see if you can follow their tracks. You inspect the plant and find some footprints, and continue until you search a bush to find a grubby key. The footsteps lead to a trapdoor near the strange old man who collects bones. Inside the cave, you look over a balcony and find Shadaftiak talking to Zamoragul. You overhear that for anyone to pass by the doors and gates, they need to be covered in the red mist. Zamoragul's cousin Lucian has been growing in strength, but he does not wish to work alongside him because Lucian would be in control. Arrav now appears, but as the slave of this necromancer. Zamoragul is the one that's been gathering the zombie forces. You're going to split paths. Elias White is going to go to Varrock to update the guards on what's been found so far, whilst you keep exploring deeper into this dungeon. You pick up 3 bottles off the floor and fight the zombies until you get the red mist so you can go through the gates. Arrav appears and says this place is too dangerous for the likes of you. Whilst he has no control over his body, he does sometimes have control over his mind, but only when Zamoragul is not paying attention to him. Arrav says that Zamoragul has his heart, which is why he has control over him, and he insists that you should leave before he's forced to do Zamoragul's bidding and maybe attack you. You get more red mist and continue going through the dungeon, and again you look over another balcony to see the zombie forces that are making their final preparations before heading north. You find Elias in the Varrock Palace and say that Zamoragul is about to make another attack on Varrock. You go to Captain Rovin and fill him in on all the details. Elias would need to research if there is any chance to save Arrav, and asks you to find out if the Shield of Arrav can return to its magical glory by speaking with the Imkamdo dwarves of Kamdazal. Captain Rovin will prepare the city's defences. Romano says the shield was crafted long before his time, but the sacred forge here is a powerful relic from the time when God still walked this land. He says that before Kamdazal's ruin, the sages would use this forge to guide people in the Dream Theatre, a mystical and surreal place that they were transported to and had visions of the past, present and future. You can use it too, but you need some imbued baronite first. It's a normal baronite deposit imbued with the core of a chaos golem. You use this on the sacred forge. In the Dream Theatre, you speak with Arrav, and he explains that it wasn't him who used the shield, but the son of Varrock's founder. Only then did the zombies meet their doom, as there was a magical force in his blood, so you have to find one of his descendants if you're to save Varrock. Suddenly Zamoragul takes over Arrav's body. He says that the zombies are already at Varrock's walls and it's too late, so you quickly look for Captain Rovin and explain that you need to find someone of Arrav's lineage. He suggests that you speak to Reldo and hands you the Shield of Arrav. Reldo says that Surok Magis has escaped. The teleblock on him stopped working, and in hindsight, imprisoning a deadly mage in a library wasn't a very well thought out plan. You ask if there are any living descendants of Arrav. He says there's a document on the desk in the corner that lists the elders of Varrock, and the Varrock census can be used to find matching names, so you're going to speak to a bunch of them. Aonisig Reisfer doesn't have the blood to activate the magic shield, so it's not him. Nor Sir Prizin, nor Romeo, nor Horvik, nor Curator Haig Halen, but he mentions that from the Halen line there was a lady named Nedwina who married into the Fitzharmon family. So you talk to Deminthes in southeast Varrock. You pass the shield to him and it magically responds to his touch, so you quickly get to the palace and in one fell swoop his magic electrocutes all the zombies. Being defeated here in Varrock, Zamoragul decides to go north. Whilst you've managed to save Varrock, you still haven't been able to save Arrav yet. Once Elias has a lead on how to do something about Arrav's heart, he'll be in touch. You get 15,000 smithing and hunter XP and access to Zamoragul's base, where you can get the zombie axe. Completing this quest is a requirement for While Guthix Sleeps and the Curse of Arrav. To start this quest you must have completed Troll Romance and Defender of Varrock. You speak to Elias White in the Uza Oasis. He thinks that he can find some knowledge to help Arrav by going onto the plateau and investigating the mastaba, which means tomb. His research has informed him of a rare and unusual form of necromancy that was once practiced in these lands, involving the removal and preservation of the heart, similar to what the priests of Icflorin would do during their burial ceremonies. The difference is that this necromancy practice is performed while the victim is still alive. This dark magic angers Elias, as he believes this is almost certainly what happened to Arrav. The victim of this curse becomes a slave to whoever possesses their heart. Even though their mind and soul remain intact, the body does as the necromancer commands. You must recover Arrav's heart. Not only must it be preserved, but it must also be kept beating as well. Zamoragul has a way of doing this that Elias doesn't understand yet, but maybe the mastaba on the hill contains the answers. It was built to house a pharaoh who ruled thousands of years ago. One of her many feats was saving the victim of a Majorat necromancer. Whilst you explore the mastaba, Elias will try finding where Zamoragul is keeping Arrav's heart, and he wants you to find a group of what Elias presumes to be explorers that entered the mastaba and haven't come out yet. He also expects that there may be defensive mechanisms in place to deter any would-be grave robbers. You'll meet back here once you're done. You run up the hill and enter the mastaba. Inside you search a skeleton to find a key. Searching a second skeleton, you find a second key. You see a wall with odd markings which you search to disable the trap, and then pull a lever whilst turning one of the keys in a small keyhole beneath it. You do the same on the other side and are now able to open the imposing doors to fight a golem guard. While the screen shakes, you move away to avoid a lot of damage. After you defeat it, you're able to continue down some stairs. You then walk across some coloured tiles that raise the other colours as you step on them. Pulling a lever on the other side disables this obstacle, and you make it to a room with a sarcophagus and many statues. On some shelves, you find some canopic jars filled with oil. A mural shows one of the jars being filled with 3 dwellberries and a ring of life, which you also do. On another mural, you see the Pharaoh Queen placing a heart into the jar. You return to Elias and say that this should be able to preserve Arrav's heart, and whilst you are exploring the mastaba, a colleague of Elias has recently spotted Zamoragul entering an old fort near the mountain of Trollweiss, after adventuring through some tunnels that led to it. You take a pickaxe with you, as there have been a few cave-ins recently. Near where the troll child and his parents are from the desert treasure quest, you find a cave entrance that leads to the summit of the Trollweiss mountain. Here you find a crate with rubble that needs to be mined from multiple directions to get through. As you make progress, you find tablets made of stone, granite, slate and shale. Together they tell a story of a ritual stone that will grant great power, and a plan to dig some tunnels under the mountainside that will lead to it undisturbed. Eventually the tunnels reach a brick structure, and among the bookcases you find some notes of each of the Majorat. Akthanakos has not been seen since the God Wars, and his presence is still felt in Gielinor. He is presumably still loyal to Zaros, and still in a struggle with Enakra. Azanadra is loyal to Zaros and has recently been freed. Bilrak hasn't appeared yet, but is willing to go along with what Zamoragul is suggesting. Enakra's presence is also felt, and she has been in a continual struggle with Akthanakos this whole time. Haziel is part of the Zamrak-aligned faction. He's been gaining in power and territory. Jarlan was considered the weakest of the Majorat race. Khazad is the youngest, but he managed to build an army by manipulating weak-minded humans. Karshai disappeared and hasn't chosen to ally himself with either faction. Mizark, Lamistad, and Ralvash were sacrificed during the Majorat rituals. Lucian is Zamoragul's mage cousin, who's become increasingly powerful and is suspected of having found the Stone of Jas. Slisk is a powerful and elusive Majorat with strong shape-shifting abilities and prefers to stay in the shadows. He has recently reappeared with Zaros' horn. Wahisiatel is on the Zarosian side, and lastly, Zamoragul just notes that he considers himself amazing. You climb up the steps and see Arrav, who you talk to. You say that you're here to help him and ask where his heart is. He says that in the next room, behind a flame tapestry, you might find something that can help. You search it and find a key, plus some complex plans for Zamoragul's base in Silvaria. You return to Elias in the Uzo Oasis with the base plans and the key. He interprets the plans and confirms that the chamber marked in the base contains Arrav's heart. The corridors in some areas were set up with a human detection spell that would trigger an alarm, but the sewer system can be used to bypass it, although surges of electrical energy are sent through the water there, so you'll need some insulated boots. On the other side of the sewer, you find a vault door which is guarded by zombies that will set off an alarm when they see an intruder, with an incapacitating gas being released and knocking out all living things in the area. The final door is made of 5-inch thick runite reinforced steel and has a 4-digit access code. If it's entered incorrectly more than twice, the alarm is set off. And behind the door is a crisscross of special fire rays that Zamoragul made. Touching these causes damage and sets off the alarm. In the back of the vault is the pedestal holding Arrav's heart. You say that this sounds like an impossible mission, but Elias will act as bait to lure out the zombies, and to deal with the lasers you can use a crossbow and a grappling hook. You meet him at Zamoragul's base near Varrock. Whilst he distracts the zombies, you make your way to the kitchen and squeeze through a pipe. The insulated boots allow you to run through the electrified sewer system until you make it to another pipe. Then, in the most southeastern room, in a chest you find a 4-letter code. On the table you find some decoder strips, and by inputting the letters, you can decipher the correct numbers and are now able to open the metal doors with this 4-digit code. You then equip your mithril grappling hook with a crossbow to avoid a fire laser alarm. When you try to take the heart from the pedestal, Zamoragul appears. He sets Arrav to kill you. Every few attacks he'll do a whirlwind with his axe, which you move out of the way of. And also every now and then a zombie appears, leaving a trail of venom on the floor behind him. You can defeat the zombie at a distance. Zamoragul asks Sharaftirk to deal with Arrav, but somehow there's a magical force stopping him from teleporting. Elias appears and distracts them, telling you to grab the heart quickly, and then you're teleported out. You're immediately suspicious of Elias being powerful enough to have the skills to teleport directly into the room and keep the Majorat at bay, and also the fact that they seem to know who he was. He says everyone's entitled to their secrets, and that his relation with Zamoragul is complicated, but he doesn't want to elaborate further. Whilst the heart is the key to Zamoragul's control over Arrav, possessing it might not be enough to fully break the control. He'll have to do further research and wait for the right opportunity. He'll be in touch once things are ready again, and he departs. You get 2 quest points, access to Zamoragul's fort, and 40,000 XP in mining, thieving, and agility, while Guthix sleeps. To start this quest you must have completed A Tale of Two Cats, Nature Spirit, Tears of Guthix, Temple of the Eye, Wanted, The Hand in the Sand, Dream Mentor, Fight Arena, The Path of Gluthry, and Defender of Varrock. You talk to Ivy Sophister in Tavali. She asks if you got the Armadillo communique, and seeing that you did, she tells you to talk with Therisk upstairs. He leads a group of Guthixians called the Crux Ikal, whose objective is to bring balance to the world in order to protect it. This sometimes means using violence if it prevents a greater violence. This group has been keeping their eye on the Majorat for some time and consider them a threat to the world. They didn't think that Lucian was that dangerous until he obtained the Staff of Armadillo. Suddenly a melee and a ranged assassin appear, who do a special attack of firing a poison arrow followed by a sneaky melee attack. You deal with them, and Therisk says that it's the first time that the assassins have ever made an attempt in Tavali, so Lucian must consider the both of you to be a massive threat at the moment. The Cruxikal have already formed an alliance with the Guardians of Armadillo, and they're reaching out to the Temple Knights also. It's an unexpected scene for the followers of different gods to unite in this way, but their differences mean little when compared to the threat that the Majorat pose. Whilst Lucian is difficult to locate, he's been expanding his resources at a rapid rate, and you can take advantage of this. He's been working with many people, including the treasure hunter Mavario, who now has a Khazad army bodyguard named Darv, and you might be able to find his whereabouts by starting at the fight arena. Mavario has been doing research in all the libraries around the world, focusing on the God Wars, but mostly on Saradomin and Guthix in particular. So to recap, whilst Lucian normally operates alone, after acquiring the Staff of Armadillo, he's been forming many alliances and is planning something big. You talk to the Khazad launderer who cleans clothes and ask him if he knows anyone called Darv or Mavario. You pay him 500 coins to gossip, and he says that Mavario is a frequent customer of his. He also mentions that there's this creature called a Brorf that might be able to help you find him through the scent on his clothes, so he gives you one of Mavario's dirty shirts, and you go to the Feldip Hills. The hunting expert teaches you how to catch one with a pitfall trap and a Mortmire fungus as bait. Then you go to the Khazad battlefield, let Dabrov sniff the shirt, and it finds a trapdoor to a base. In a chest you find some runes and then find an old battered door with the word prohibited on it. One of the letters of this word is drawn with the symbols of a rune which is placed in the door to unlock it. In the first room of Mavario's secret base, you search bookcases and find levers which you pull until the electric current is directed and the gate is deactivated. You also search for traps on the staircase before climbing it. Upstairs on the desk you find Mavario's notes which log his investigation into the Eye of Saradomin, aka the Fist of Guthix, aka the Stone of Jas. In the waste paper basket you find a ruby key and insert it into the keyhole in the bookcase, which raises some stairs to Mavario's bedroom. You search the bed and find a chest under it which is also unlocked with the ruby key, but make sure to search for traps first. You find some more notes written by him. He notes that Lucian is taking an interest in his research, but despite gaining the power of the Staff of Armadyl, he doesn't seem satisfied and claims that this is only the beginning. He learnt a demonic spell that raises creatures from the dead, and at the Wizard's Tower they discovered the rift of the Eye of Saradomin. Lucian wants to touch it to become more powerful. Back in the middle floor, you inspect the painting and find a lever which you pull. You search the drawers and find some notes on pressure. You then add some weight onto the statue according to how much you weighed when you first entered the base, and then leave with the notes. Therisk says that the New Alliance have decided to hold their meetings in the White Knight's castle in Falador. He would like you to tell Idria near McGrubber's Woods about the updated location. You appear just as Lucian's mercenaries attack the Guardians of Armadyl, and after you help deal with them, they'll meet you at the White Knight's castle. You're introduced to Arcasay, and Idria thinks that Lucian might be raising an undead army in the wilderness. To find his whereabouts, Therisk has developed a truth serum. You're given a teleorb that's directly linked to the jail cell here, so you've got to plant this on one of Lucian's spies. For now, all you know is that the spy should be in Draenor Manor or Draenor Village, so you find the shady stranger and plant a teleorb on him to trap him in the cell. But he doesn't drink the truth serum and instead destroys it. To make another potion, you'll need an enriched snapdragon, and Betty can help you with that. You get some pink dye from her and place the snapdragon seed on the table. You use the pink dye to make a rose-tinted lens and stand in the doorway to shine the pink light onto the snapdragon seed to enrich it. Therisk says there's a herb patch on top of the castle. Whilst the seed grows, you talk to Idria. Seeing that Lucian's forces will be sizable, you'll need to recruit talented individuals. She wants you to contact 3 of the Slayer Masters and Syrisus from the Dream Mentor quest, although he's always on the move, so you'll need to use the NPC contact spell. You explain the alliance to the Slayer Master Toriel, and although he's retired, he's happy to do one last job. You also speak to Maschner, who's been waiting for many centuries to fight the Mazharat again. Syrisus says he's happy to help, and Duradel seems to have some sort of vendetta against Lucian. The enriched snapdragon has grown. Therisk makes another super truth serum, and in the drawers in the corner you find a papyrus and a charcoal. You enter the cell where the shady stranger is and threaten him, so he drinks the truth serum. He says that he never met Lucian, he only took his orders from the Dark Squall. He describes the Squall to you, and you sketch him. That's all the prisoner knows. You show the sketch to Idria, she'll send copies throughout the spy network. In the meantime, she asks you to recruit Gommel, Haralak Menarus, and Sloane from the Warriors Guild. Gommel says he'll take any chance to put down evil. Haralak is also honoured to help, and Sloane's family lives under the code of not letting any evil flourish. He and his axe will help you. Hazelmere appears. He also wants to help stop the threat. Now you have to infiltrate the Black Knight's fortress and keep an eye out for Silith in case he needs support. With a bronze medhelm and an iron chain body, you make it into the fortress. Downstairs, at the tile with a marking of an orb, you cast the Charge Orb spell on it and unlock the trapdoor. After running across the bridge, you kill 3 elite Black Knights to get a full set of elite black armor. Equipping this makes the rest of the knights unaggressive towards you. Going through the western door, you find a shortcut to the beginning of the dungeon that you can use anytime in the future, and through the northern door you find a hideout. Searching the wardrobe, you find some more elite black armor. At a table, you find a lobster with a restore potion. On another table, you find a lore rune, a death rune, and a strange teleorb. And next to the northern wall, you find a key rack that you take a key from. You then go to the prison cells and find Silith. You heal him with the food and restore potion. His mission here isn't complete yet. He needs to find the Dark Squall and gather any intelligence available. You give him some of the extra armor, which allows him to safely leave the prison cell. Silith will study the maps on the southern wall while you deal with the Dark Squall. He suggests that you plant a teleorb on him. In the southern wardrobe you find the Dark Squall robes and are able to go up the ladder. It turns out that the head wizard of the bad guys was Surok Magis this whole time. He fights you. When he casts an earth blast, you counter with air, and if he does fire, you counter with water, and vice versa. When he launches an explosive, you have to use telegrab on it and high out kit. When he calls in a strong or agile warrior and they approach you, you have to cast either weaken or any binding spell on them accordingly. After you defeat Surok Magis, you plant the orb on him. Silith has already reported back on your good work. He also was able to gather a lot of important intelligence. It seems that Lucian has allied with most of the Zamorakian organizations. You say that you planted a tele-orb on Surok, and Therisk believes that we can make a move on Lucian now. His secret base is on the western edge of the wilderness. When you're ready, Idria casts a spell that switches you and Surok's positions, so now he's in the cell and you're in the headquarters again. Standing in the magic circle, you use the strange tele-orb that you found on the table earlier, and this teleports you to the secret base just west of the wilderness. You climb to get on top of the Chaos Temple, and now have sight of Lucian, who summons an army of skeletons clad in rune armor. He recognizes you through the disguise and attacks. From the sidelines, the Alliance appears. Hazelmere observes you through a telescope, then Lucian quickly disposes of Duradel and Sloane. Hazelmere's crystal attack did something, but not enough, and his seed pod burst. It seems that his time has come. Lucian then quickly disposes of Sirius, Gommel, Turiel, and Hazelmere. Mashna says that we must find where Lucian went, for Turiel and Duradel must be avenged. Haralak is going back to Falador, as your current weapons seem to be doing no damage to Lucian. He's become too powerful. It's more imperative than ever that he does not reach the Stone of Jas, but a little bit of good news is that Akrase's informant saw Mavario entering the caves below Lumbridge Swamp with floating lights. This is where the Tears of Guthix are. You suggest that you disguise yourself as a Dark Squall again. As this is the only plan you've currently got, they say you should do it. Mavario believes that the Stone of Jas is down the chasm. Your Sapphire Lantern needs to be enhanced, so he casts a light spell on it, and you descend. You search some skeletons, finding a hammer, a chisel, and a spade. With these you remove the water orb from one of the braziers, and the air orb from another. Nearby you find some rocks, which you can search using the spade. Within the crushed brazier you find an earth orb, and in the last rocks you get the red orb. In front of the 3 cavities, you see some chiseled blocks. You use the corresponding orb to match the element. When you've got the 4 elemental blocks, you crawl into the caves and place the blocks into the corresponding mechanisms. Lastly, you climb up and use a fire block in the middle, then inspect the stone cube. This opens up the skull, which you then climb into. Inside the next section, you find a skeleton with a sickle and a druid pouch. You can also restore your run energy and get a stamina effect by inspecting the brazier. You see a stone table with symmetrical glyphs on it. You can use the druid pouches on the spirits and get some herb lore ingredients that are going to be used on the corresponding statues. You can also cast a bloom with your sickle while standing on the vines to get vine flowers and add more charges to your pouch. For the defense statue, you use a Ranar and white berries and obtain the defense dolmen, which is a small statue which you place onto the central stone table. For hunter, you use an Avanto and ground kebbit tooth. For ranging, you use a dwarf weed and wine of Zamorak. For combat, you use a Haralander and goat horn dust. For strength, you use a Taramin and limpwort. For energy, you use a Haralander and a chocolate dust. For balance, you use a garlic, some silver dust, a Haralander and some red spider eggs. And for attack, you use a Guam leaf and an Eye of Newt. Now that you've got 8 dolmens placed onto the central table, it unlocks the final section, opening the giant door that descends into the ground. You now walk through the gate to get to the final area. A balanced elemental that's protecting the stone and knows your whole past, present and future appears before you. He attacks with all 3 styles. If he's orange, you should protect and attack with ranged. If he's blue, you should protect and attack with mage. And if he's white, you should protect and attack with melee. After you defeat the balanced elemental, you can touch the Stone of Jas. V from the Fremenix was the first one to find it deep below the ice of Lunar Isle. Throughout time, some would use it for good, others would use it for destruction. The Dragonkin were bound to it long ago. It caused them unimaginable pain, but also granted them immense power. The only way to win is with the stone. Mavario catches up. He spent his whole life looking for this, so he won't let you stop him now. You explain that if Lucian gets the stone, the world would burn, but Mavario is convinced that he would be the one with power and not Lucian. You say you won't let him get the stone, so he says that he'll have to deal with you. But Lucian appears. He claims it's finally time for the Marjarat to take their rightful place as the sole inheritors of Gielinor, with Lucian as their god. Anyone who stands in his way will be swept away. He commends your efforts to try and stop him, but he says that death always awaits. Now with the staff and the Stone of Jas, no one can stop him, not even if Zamorak reappeared. You now enter a fight with 2 tormented demons and you have super buffed stats. If they do a slash attack, you must protect from melee. If they do a cone-shaped attack, you must protect range. And if they do a fireball attack, you must protect mage. Alternatively, you can let the Guardians of Armadyl chip away at them and then you can deal the final blow at the end. Once you have defeated all the demons, you return to the White Knight's castle and explain what happened. Lucian has the stone, but this doesn't mean that you're all going to give up. The alliance between the Temple Knights, the Cruxical and the Guardians of Armadyl is strong, and they'll continue fighting for the common good and will try to strengthen their forces. When Lucian dares to rear his head again, they'll be ready. But for now, you can rest until the time is right, and you'll be the first to know. Lucian will be defeated, and the world will be safe once more. Meanwhile, deep within the Dragonkin lair, some of the Dragonkin that were in hibernation are now awakened. Sifaf, Sakurf, and Strisaf sense that the stone has been uncovered, so they're planning to bring pain and destruction once again. The Dragonkin will rise once more. Quest complete. You get 5 quest points, 80,000 thieving XP, 75,000 farming and herblore XP, 50,000 hunter XP, and access to the Guthixian temple. With all the quests complete, you go to Draenor village and talk to the wise old man. For 99,000 coins you get the quest cape and hood, thus completing the old school RuneScape quest lore series. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. This was a project that took 1,200 hours on my account, plus all the time writing and reading the scripts, editing the videos and the thumbnails. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. These videos are dedicated to everyone who wanted a quick, short way of learning what actually happens during the quests in old school RuneScape. It's been a great journey for me and I hope you had fun too. Soon I'll upload a mega cut with every single episode in one video all together. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching Season 8 of the Quest Lore series. At this point in time, that's all the quests complete. It's been an incredible journey and I've got more to come, so stick around, and thank you for your support.